Welcome to the TPC desktop. In this video, we'll look at accessing COGO from various places in the TPC desktop. Let's start with the traverse view. I'm going to open up one of the traverses here. And inside the traverse view, I have a COGO menu and I have a COGO pull down. This is stacked buttons, so it's got all the COGO options available here. And whatever option I choose becomes the top option. So if I want to do an intersect, it opens the intersect dialog, but it also leaves that button on top. So if I want to repeat that again, I can. Now, all the dialogues that I access from the traverse view take a look at what's currently selected. So if I want to select points 201 and points 206 and then do a random inverse, Traverse PC uses 201 and 206 for the random inverse. Let's say I want to compute a point. I want to compute a new position for point 205. So I'm going to do COGO compute coordinates. So point 205 is the point that's going to be computed. Traverse BC looked above that point in the traverse and brought in point 204. Now I can override all of these, but Traverse BC set it up for me right off the bat. The other thing that I find when I access COGO from the traverse view is that Traverse BC looks to see what the distance and direction type are for the traverse, in this case true bearing and geodetic distance, and it initiates the COGO with those same distance and direction types, true bearing and geodetic distance. If I were in a grid traverse, and I have one here, and I wanted to do a COGO, because this traverse is grid bearing and grid distance, when I do a random inverse, I'll get a COGO that's set up for grid bearing and grid distance. Now I can change any one of these within the COGO itself, but that helps me sort of track that COGO routine with that traverse. Just kind of a neat way to do that. So think about selecting points in the traverse view to operate on the COGO routine. Let's close out the traverse view and let's come over here to the drawing. The drawing also has a COGO menu, and if I right click I can get that same COGO menu here. So let's go ahead and select a couple of points here. I'm going to issue the select command and let's click 401 and 402. Now let's right click and tell Traverse PC that we want to go into COGO. And let's do a random inverse. You see what it did? It took those selected points, 401, 402, and did the random inverse between the two of them. It also took the distance and direction type for the drawing and initiated the COGO dialog. So here I've got true bearing and geodetic distance, because if I go back to the drawing and go into drawing settings, I've got true bearing and geodetic distance. So whatever the distance and direction type are for that drawing, those are used to set up the COGO when I initiate COGO from the drawing as well. Now, in addition to just right-clicking a blank spot to bring up the COGO menu, or choosing the COGO menu here, I can also access an individual point. So if I put the point over 204 and right-click, I see that there's a COGO menu down here, and I have all of the same COGO options available, but this time they use that selected point. So let's do that compute coordinate once again like we did before. Traverse PC says, because I selected this COGO command with 204, I'm going to assume that's the point I want to compute. So I can put in the information for the dialog, and when I do a computation based on this COGO routine, I'll have the opportunity to update point 204. So depending on what I have selected in the drawing view, or what point I right-click when I initiate COGO, I'll get different data in the COGO dialog right off the bat. Now I'm going to close out this view and talk real quickly about the desktop itself. The desktop itself doesn't really try to control distance and direction type, that sort of thing. It tries to just bring up the last thing you did. So if I go to COGO random inverse, it says, oh, the last time you opened that inverse, random inverse, you had true bearing geodetic distance between points 401 and 402. So it just opens that back up. Whether I choose the menu up here or whether I do that off the toolbar, either way, it just opens the last routine. If I initiate a routine I haven't had open yet, let's say I want to translate something here, I'm not going to have any points filled in. because I haven't selected any data yet. And I can simply type in a point or use the chevrons to select that point from a drawing, and Traverse PC will execute on those points. Then finally, real quick, let's take a look at the managers themselves. So I can select data in here. Let's say that these 4 traverses need to be brought onto the basis of bearing for this survey. Maybe they came in from another survey or from some record data that I entered, and I want to get them locked onto this survey with a rotation and translation. Well, I'm going to select them here, and then I'm going to say I want to translate these first. But you see how the what list says the 4 items selected in the Traverse Manager? So out of all of the options here, because I initiated COGO with these selected, it said I want to select those 4 options there. I can do the same thing by selecting that right here, COGO, and then let's do a translate. Again, I want those 4 objects, and I would have to fill in the point to translate from and to. Same way when I go to rotate now. Once I've translated those, if I want to rotate them, let's bring this over. Here again is that what list, and it says the 4 selected items in the Traverse Manager. Again, there's no rotation point or rotation degrees because I haven't worked with this dialog before. So I can simply put those in. I want to rotate about 201 so that 201 to 204 is the same as 401 to 402. Okay, and proceed like that. So those are the ways to access COGO from the Traverse view, the drawing view, the desktop, the Traverse Manager, and you'll find the Points Manager is much the same with a COGO routine that lets me pick points here and then come in and execute those same COGO commands, but with the points in the manager occupying the COGO dialog.